really, if you think about what money really does, put you in the crosshairs of people that you may not want to put their attention on you, right? And so, for example, yeah, when I shared the video on my Instagram of the strippers being robbed after the BET Awards, chances are somebody knew that they had all this cash and they followed them home and they took their money, right? And the other ways that money makes you a target is that lawyers may want to end up suing you, right? Because lawyers, when they file lawsuits, first thing they do is they say, well, who's associated with this case that has money in their pocket? So lawyers will put you in the lawsuit just because. Will Smith said that he keeps 8 lawyers on retainer just because he gets sued all the time for no reason. People just throw spaghetti at the wall so they can see what sticks. Also, what else? I saw, oh crap, let me go back here. In fact, I saw a case today. Hold on, I got to find my slide again. Sorry, everybody. I saw a case today of a guy. I think his name was Casanova, if I'm not mistaken. And he went on Vlad TV. I went on Vlad TV a couple of times years ago, but I kind of stopped going on there because I didn't really like the direction that the show was going. But anyway, he went on Vlad TV, and because he was, I guess, trying to get attention or whatever, he starts talking about all this stuff that he did, all this dirt that he did, these gang affiliated things that he did back when he was, in the streets or whatever. And I'm not sure, but I think that basically he kind of snitched on himself. And I don't know if the statute of limitations hadn't expired or what, but basically they got him on a RICO charge, organized crime, and he just got sentenced to 15 years in prison today. And so effectively, what happened the way I look at it is, he was looking for attention, and he didn't understand that attention isn't always a good thing. If you remember that movie American Gangster, there was a part where Denzel Washington's character, he wasn't Bumpy Johnson, he was Frank Lucas, and he goes to the Ali Frazier fight. You all remember that? And his wife gave him that fur coat, and he shows up in the fur coat. So because he's wearing the fur coat with the fur hat, like looking like a pimp, the FBI is like, well, who's this guy in the front row shaking hands with Joe Frazier, who's wearing a fur coat and a fur hat? So they're taking his picture and they put him on the wall because they're like, oh, he must be somebody because he's a peacock. And so culturally, again, this is why in my book, the 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power, that's what we're doing our training on. I talk a lot about culture because I get concerned about culture that encourages Black men, especially, to be peacocks with their money. I did an interview on a show, a platform, this lady named Tasha K. She asked me, why do rappers just like to brag and be so arrogant? And I said, I don't know. It's just the culture. Somebody bastardized the culture, where you have to sit here and listen to some man constantly tell you how he's better than everybody else. And unfortunately, just drawing that attention to yourself or telling everybody how much money you have. When you see it on the internet, you'll see people that will show how much money's in their account, or they will show off their material possessions. It does not bring good energy. It does not typically make people happy for you. It makes people really not like you. It makes people want to watch you fall. It makes people want to conspire against you, or it may make people just want to constantly bother you, begging you for money and giving you sob stories, or trying to scam you, or trying to get you involved in stupid business deals. And it's even worse when you're in a family where there's not a lot of money. Has anybody ever seen? Have you ever had the really interesting experience of seeing a family where there is no money and seeing like one relative suddenly get a whole lot of money? Like maybe they get signed to the NBA, or they win a lawsuit and they get a couple $100,000. Has anybody ever seen the sheer chaos that emerges when something like that happens? I have, and it is fascinating. It is the most fascinating thing in the world to watch. I knew a young person I mentored who won a lawsuit, and suddenly he had a couple $100,000. And this is the family where everybody was struggling to pay the rent. I mean, nobody had any money in their savings account. Nobody had any investments or extra money. Everybody went to work if they had a job. And suddenly he's sitting on a couple $100,000, and he's like, Dr. Boyce, what do I do with this money? And I knew him. I know his family. And I said, well, first thing you're going to have to do is protect yourself, because you're going to, everybody's going to come at you to get a piece of this money. And you're going to have to find some way to preserve your relationships with your loved ones while not letting this whittle away at your bank account. So what happened to him was First off, there were the guilt trips. There were people saying, "Oh, well, why can't you? I need money to help me pay my rent. I'm really struggling here. Why can't you help me out? You're supposed to be my cousin." And da 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 da. So then he gets accused of being uppity because he's like, I'm still not going to give you my money. I'm sorry. So he gets accused of being uppity. So he starts getting, kind of, people talking about him behind his back, his own relatives and stuff, and saying, "Oh, well, you changed since you got this money. You don't care about nobody but yourself." He starts getting pitched like all kinds of harebrained schemes for businesses. Well, I always wanted to start a liquor store, and all I need you to do is invest $25,000, and you have 200,000. So just all this is 25,000. I mean, it's going to make a whole lot of money because blah 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 blah, right? And that's another way that people can lose a lot of money, because what's happened there in that situation is when somebody comes to you and they say, "Oh, I got a great idea. So I need you to put up all the money and I'll help you with the idea. And if it succeeds, then we both win. We're going to split the money. But if it fails, then you lose. So it's heads, I win, tails, you lose. Because I don't have any skin in the game. I haven't put up any money. You're putting up all the money. A lot of athletes lose money that way. Somebody says, "Hey, just put in $50,000 and then we can get it going and it's going to be great," and blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't work out, and next thing you know, you're out $50,000. That's why a lot of athletes go broke. There's a guy named Clinton Portis who played for the Washington Redskins. I don't know, anybody remember Clinton Portis? Clinton Portis was a great running back. He was the highest paid running back in the entire NFL. And there was a point where Clinton Portis was, he called his friend because he was sitting outside of his accountant's office with a gun. And he was going to kill his accountant and kill himself, maybe. And I don't know if he's going to kill himself. That part I don't know. But I know he definitely had a gun. And the reason he was outside his accountant's office with a gun is because his accountant, he had put all his money with this guy, this accountant slash investment advisor, and all the money was gone. And Clinton did not understand that. How did all my money disappear? I don't know exactly what happened, but I'm going to speculate that what probably occurred is that he didn't get that the investments that he put his money into didn't have the right risk structure. They were set up where, first of all, he probably wasn't diversified properly. If you have a portfolio of diversified stocks and at least 60-70% of your assets are in the S&P 500, you mathematically, you simply cannot go broke. You can't. If I got $10 million and half that money is planted in companies like Google and Microsoft and Tesla and Nvidia and Costco and all that, I can't. The chances of me going broke the probability is pretty much zero. So typically when people say I had $10 million and now I have zero, I instantly know in my head, okay, I get it. Somebody got you to invest in their cousin's bowling alley and you put a chunk of your resources toward one investment. Oh, and then what also happened is I bet that you got ate up by the fees. There was a guy I met once who played for the Utah Jazz, and he was such a smart guy. I met him in Oklahoma City, and he said that when his investment advisor had him sign the contract, his advisor assumed. Now he didn't know, his advisor assumed he was just some dumb Negro. He didn't know that he listened to people like me. He'd been a follower of mine for a long time, and he said that what he did was in the contract there were all these little fees in there. All these little fees. And that's how banks get a lot of your money. Banks get your money with fees and penalties and everything else. And he just literally went through and said, "I'm not signing with all these fees in here." Because what fees are, it means that I'm going to get my money no matter what. Right. It means I'm not taking the risk with you. Like, we're going to sign this deal. We're going into business together. And if the deal works out, yeah, we're all going to make money. Hooray, hooray. But if things go bad, I'm not the basketball player. I'm just the little guy who went to synagogue and Harvard Law School, and I'm going to take my $2 million I make from you and invest that in the 401k or invest in my account for my kids, and then I'm going to wait for the next black kid to come along that's going to sign another contract with me, and I'll extract money out of him too. You'll just get shipped back to the projects because nobody ever prepared you on how to set up a proper financial plan. Nobody ever taught you the subtleties of money that cause people to lose millions of dollars and get ripped off. So effectively, Thank you, Aisha. I see your comment. So effectively, that's what tends to happen in a lot of these situations where somebody loses all their money. It's usually just through highly improper investing. So anyway, so money ends up making you a target largely because lawyers want to sue you. Also, let me see. Oh, here we go. Your friends start to bring you all kinds of sob stories. You start to become you become seen as like the financial savior for the family. Scammers see you as a target. By the way, banking scams are on the rise, so be really careful. Don't put all your money in one location, in my opinion. If I were you, I wouldn't do that. Also, everyone wants to sell you something constantly. Think about it. If you're selling a product, you mean you want to sell it to people that have money, not people that don't have any money, right? So people are going to try to sell you things. And so all of y'all, shout out to all of y'all who are part of your MLM programs, but just kind of understand that like you probably have friends and relatives that really don't enjoy inviting you over for dinner now because they know you're going to try to sell them something. So y'all got to kind of be careful with that. However, I get it. It's life. It's fine. That's what it is. Also, you're offered tons of horrible investments. We talked about that. So basically, in some other ways, money can make you a target is just through robbery or theft. A lot of celebrities and athletes get robbed because they constantly love going on Instagram, telling everybody how much money they have. If I had that kind of money, I wouldn't tell anybody. In fact, I do have money, and I don't tell anybody I have any money, but I can't really hide it because I'm an expert on money. So people assume I must have something. But you don't really see me. If you notice, you don't see me go on Instagram showing what kind of car I drive or showing, some symbol of luxury. I just, that's just, first of all, I feel like it's a little bit tacky, but then second of all, I just don't want, like, I get enough attention. I don't want more. I don't want people. I just don't want that. Right. You just want to kind of do your thing and live your life and leave it at that. Also, lots of women suddenly think you're handsome. I was really fascinated by that. When I wrote my book, Financial Lovemaking, that was one of my biggest like shockers is like, I noticed how like when I had money or when I was no longer like this broke, struggling graduate student, suddenly I became like this really handsome, interesting man. And I was getting the attention of all these women that really ignored me back when I was broken. And I was just, some nerdy grad student. And that's okay. That's life. That's actually biological. Women are attracted to symbols of strength and economic security. Women like security. They don't like economic insecurity. So if you ever wonder why your woman goes crazy when you mess up the money, it's because she needs, just from a million years of evolution, she needs to be around a man who's going to be competent and dependable because she doesn't like want to die and she doesn't want bad things to happen to her babies. Also, financial advisors will try to rob you of fine print. We talked about that. And old friends suddenly remember they gave you their best ideas. That's another funny thing. I saw this guy who said that he came up with the idea for Facebook, and there's one couple, actually the Winklevoss twins, who actually had a good case to argue that they actually did come up with the concept of Facebook. I actually believe them. But then there was someone else who said, yeah, I came up with the idea for Facebook. But what's funny to me is, coming up with the idea for Facebook is very different from executing the idea. Executing the idea is much, much harder than just coming up with the idea. And so I've seen people do this in business also, where their friend will come to them and say, hey, why don't we start a business doing blank? And then the person says, I don't know. I don't think I want to do it, blah, 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 blah. And then the person says, okay, no problem. And then they go and they put in 10,000 hours of labor to build this business up and make it into something great. And then years later, this person who didn't do any of the work, who didn't do any of the planning, who had no input in the project, will come along and say, well, that was my idea too. I deserve half the money. And it's not true, because there's a difference between an idea that just, comes out of your head, and you just spoke it into words, versus an idea where you have invested thousands and thousands of hours of labor into that idea. That's like the difference between making a baby, which you can actually technically do in 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes if you hurry up, and versus actually raising a baby until the age of 18. Raising a baby to the age of 18 takes a lot of time. There's 8,760 hours in a year. It takes approximately at least 2 decades approximately to raise a child. So you're talking about 15,000, wait, no, sorry, not 15,000, sorry, 87,000 hours a decade. So you're talking about 150,000 hours of consistent effort that it takes to raise a child to the age of 18. But yet you'll have somebody that comes along and says, well, I had sex with the mama, so I'm just as much the child's parent as the mother is. And it's like, no, you're not. If you didn't put in those thousands and thousands of hours the mother did, then you didn't actually do the same thing. You deserve some credit, right? Because you did kind of help create the child, but you're not the person who actually made the child into who they are. Okay. So same thing is true with a business, right? So when I hear business pitches and business ideas, I hear good ideas all the time. Every city I go to, somebody has some great idea that I think, wow, if this idea is fully executed and fully funded, it could really grow into something great. But that doesn't really impress me. What really impresses me is the person that has an idea, even if it's a mediocre idea, where they can show me that they've been working on this thing for the last 5 or 10 years and they put in thousands of hours of labor. Then I'm like, okay, now you really got something. Now you've also signaled to me. Signaling is a real thing in finance. Signal is where somebody's actions show you what they're really all about. You can talk about it, but I need to know if you're really going to be about it, right? And so signaling theory is a real theory in finance. There's literally thousands of research papers written about signaling theory. I could tell you all day what I believe and who I am and what I do, but that's very different from what I actually do. It's watching me that will give you more information about who I am than you'll get by just hearing me tell you what I think I am, right? So effectively, when you have put that amount of time into a business and you say, I invested my life savings and I've been working on this every day for 10 hours a day for the last 5 years, then what you've done is you've signaled to me that you put $1 million or more worth of equity into this thing, right? That should make me feel more confident investing because I know I'm not going to be doing this by myself. So I encourage you to consider that signaling idea in anything that you do. Like ladies, if a man is like yip, yip, yapping, telling you what he's going to do and what he's going to be and how loyal he's going to be and all that, that's fine, or telling you how great he's going to be and all that, that's fine. But I think at some point you got to observe and watch the behavior and see if the behavior is consistent with the words, because a lot of people have that contradiction. Our words are different from what we actually do. So you signal with your actions. Okay. Like, so for example, with me and you, like we're sitting here talking right now, and I could tell you, yeah, I'm really dedicated to Black wealth. I really think about it a lot. And that can mean something, right? If you assume that I'm an honest person and I'm not lying to you. But a better piece of evidence is when I can go show you 21,000 YouTube videos that I've done over the last 14 years, almost every single day, that that have shown you that this is my life. This is what I do. This is how I operate. So look for the signals. Don't just look for the words. Talk is cheap. And culturally speaking, we have a whole lot of fast talking Negroes around in our community. I hate saying it like that, but it's true. I run into them all the time. I've run into slick talking, almost like pimp like mindset people. You know what I'm talking about. The pimps that there's something about like having a slick tongue that is appealing for people. And it's something about that I just don't respect that at all. I get it if you're a great speaker and a great orator, or you know how to converse your way into a lady's panties or into a brown paper bag. That's fine. Do whatever you're going to do. But when I see and I hear that and I don't see the substance there and I don't see the evidence and I don't see the signal that you're really truly committed to whatever you're saying to me, I don't have any respect or appreciation for that, right? Because the actions talk a whole lot more than your words do. And I think that that's really important to understand when you're talking about doing business with people. If you want to do business with somebody, don't just get caught up in what they say. Like watch what they really do, or also look at what they invest. If they're willing to invest money, like the best way to impress me with their business idea is to show me that you're putting money behind it. I see a lot of really great ideas with a lot of talking that are horrifically underfunded, right? So one of the things that says to me is that maybe you're waiting for me to put the first dollar into your business idea. Well, that's not going to work. Why would I be the first person to invest in your dream? No, I'm not doing that. I want to see how much you invested. You put your money into it, and then I'll believe you. Okay. In fact, I'll give you one example. There's a lady named Keisha Ravenel. You may know Keisha. Keisha came to the All Black National Convention and she met her husband. What's her husband? I forgot her husband's name. But anyway, Jedediah. She met Jedediah at the All Black National Convention 2 years ago. They got married a year later, and then they had a baby just now. They're about to have a baby. And Keisha came in and she did a one-on-one consultation with me about 4 years ago. And she told me about her business, and we talked through everything that she does. And the consultations aren't cheap. I think, I don't know, it's like $1,000 an hour or something like that. And after we got done talking, I said, okay, well, let me help you with your business. Now that you've invested, in this, I want to make sure you're successful. So let me see what I can do to help you. And I told her that I said, the money that I charge, it's not about the money, because I don't need the money. I don't really have the time to do a lot of one-on-ones. It's just to separate. It's a signal. It tells me, like, the fact that you don't make a lot of money and you invested this much in order to just talk to me and to be my friend and, and just run your idea by me. That tells me that you're serious. That tells me you're really in this with both feet. So now that I know that you've signaled to me how serious you are about your idea, then I'm going to kind of go with you. Because there's so many scenarios I've seen where people will bring an idea to me and I'm more serious about their idea than they are. And that's just not much fun. All right. So be ready whenever you're making a move, whether you're making a move, you're asking a lady out to, or whatever, or you're investing in a business, or you are trying to persuade anyone of anything. Always ask yourself, what signal can I send outside of just my words? Right. I can talk about what I am and what I believe and what I do, but where's that evidence? So and then also the other thing too, here's another thing that I do. This is something I don't talk about this much, but one other thing I do is when I'm really trying to convince somebody of my business idea and get them on board with something that I'm trying to do, the first thing I'll do is I'll write a check. I'll write some check. I'll say, I'm writing a check for this amount of money to get us going and getting us off the ground. And the reason I do that is to signal to say, I'm very serious about this. So this check shows you that I have skin in the game, which hopefully will separate me from everybody else that's just talking to you and just giving you a good idea. And that's the other thing too. If you have something that you believe in, like you have this dream idea, this great business that you want to do, this thing that you want to create that's going to change the world, well, you're going to have to be the first person to invest in that. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to find somebody that's going to be more committed to your idea than you are. It's just hard. At least smart people won't do that. And I know this for myself. I know that when I first started doing all the things that I do, I had to be my number one fan. I had to be my only financial backer. Nobody believed anything that I was saying until I actually showed them. Right. So be ready to invest in your idea. Be ready to put skin in the game. And then when you put that skin in the game, that will separate you from all the people that are just talking, theoretically. So let me keep going. So I think, and I know I'm belaboring that point a little bit, but I want to belabor it for one more sentence, if I may. I think that this is very important for me because I've seen, for every 100 things that I see that could be great, only one of them actually turns into something meaningful, right? Or for every 100 people I see that want to make money or be successful, only one of them actually does a lot of times, and what it is that there's something just real different about the way people operate when they're very serious about getting their results. And I encourage you, if there's something you want to do that is going to make you substantively successful, go and monitor the behavior of people that really have that real success. I'm talking about people that really have money in the bank, that really have achieved their goals, that really have got things done. And one thing you'll definitely find is that they do not waste their time. They do not waste time. Because what I have learned over time is that if you're feeding me a bunch of crap that probably isn't going to work, I don't want to talk to you anymore, because I've got stuff over here that really is working, and I'm going to put my energy into the things that are real, not into the things that are just fantasy and speculation. Okay. So try to make sure you separate yourself. So it's on 2 levels, right? One, you have to identify people who think the same way you do, but then 2, you have to show up as that person. You have to be able to show tangible evidence that what you're doing is real, and that will separate you from the pack. When you go and you sit down and you have those important meetings with people that you're hoping are going to, support what you're doing, you have to have something that separates you from the people that are just talking. All right. Talk is always cheap. All right. So what are some ways to protect your wealth? A strong estate plan. People use LLCs and other entities. Diversification, not putting all your eggs in one basket, is a way to protect your wealth. Moving on here. One thing about Black people, and I'm going to skip through this part about being economic slaves, because we kind of took a little time on the other point. The 3 pillars of wealth, very simple. If you want your kids to be rich, make sure they understand 3 things: stock market investing, real estate investing, entrepreneurship. If they are, and this is what they should learn before they ever learn how to get a job or do all these other stupid things that we do to make the economy run. If you're investing for them in the $5 a day investing plan, which you can find on my website, boycewatkins.com, time, then they're going to have, close to a couple $100,000 in liquid assets by the time they're 25 to 30 years old, which allows them to play the economic game at a certain level. It's like in basketball, if you're trying to win a championship, at the very least, you got to show up in shape and know how to play. So a child who shows up for the game of capitalist and competitive economics, and he shows up with a capital base, he's ready to play. A kid with no capital base can't play. You got to go be a slave. You got to go work for somebody. So Donald Trump, for example, he showed up ready to play. His father left him $25 million and said, "Here you go, son. Go play. The world is your playground." And that's what he did. It's when he went and bought that $400 million building when he was 28 years old and all that stuff. So the second piece is real estate investing. That's very important because things like renting, borrowing, and working for other people should be seen as temporary. These are things you do until you can get into a position where you have the economic maturity to not be saddled with all the debt or not have to pay rent to somebody else. So understanding real estate investing is one of the keys to wealth. I think that should just be fundamental. And I think even learning little basic things like, okay, how do people make money from multifamily properties? How do they make money from flipping properties? These are things that could literally be taught like in a weekend, literally in a weekend. So you think about this, right? There are things that our kids could be taught in a weekend that would change their entire life. Why are we not doing that? Why are we not taking that weekend? Okay, son, this is going to be Black Wealth Weekend. This weekend, I'm going to make sure you at least know the fundamentals of real estate. The only thing I can think of is that maybe because we're intimidated because we think it's supposed to be hard. We think it's supposed to be advanced. And so what I would say is like, if you want some help with that, we have basic tools like financial flashcards. If you go to my website, there are financial flashcards there. There are financial workbooks there. A lot of times knowing very basic things, like for example, a lot of people don't even understand how much wealth you're missing out on by being a renter for, say, a 20 or 30 year period. And a lot of it isn't just about not understanding how much money you're giving away. It's also a cultural thing, right? It's the difference between having a culture that promotes delayed gratification versus a culture that lives off of instant gratification. Instant gratification says, I'm living month to month. I'm not playing powernomics. I'm playing strugglenomics. I'm just trying to survive. A lot of this may be linked to the fact that this is how you came into the world. You grew up around people that were always just trying to survive. So if you ask them how they're doing, they never say, "Oh, I'm doing great. We're expanding. We're growing. We're making more money." They say, "Oh, I'm making it. It's hard out here, but I'm making it. I'm going to get through. Jesus is going to get me through." Right? They're always trying to get through as opposed to kind of get ahead. And so, so a lot of that's cultural in terms of your ability to even look down the road and change your periphery of vision, where you can really even look long term. It's like when I land that airplane. I'm about to do my solo this week. I told you all that but I can't because the air quality is so crappy because of those forest fires. But one thing that my instructor teaches me is when you land an airplane, you have to change your focus of vision. He said, when you're coming down to the runway, you're looking at the spot you're trying to get the plane to, and then when you're trying to level off and land the plane, you have to change your periphery. You have to look 6 car lengths down the runway so you can see where your plane is relative to the ground. Or if you don't, you'll just slam into the ground and hit the ground really hard, right? And it took me like 20 or 30 landings to really get that down. And I think wealth is the same way. In order to build wealth, you have to have a certain type of economic vision. You have to, and it's really something that can be practiced. It's something that can be trained. Just little basic things like this. One of the things that sometimes I'll say to my wife is if we get into a disagreement about something, I tell her, sometimes if we're ever arguing about something, I just stop arguing because I ask myself, am I really going to care about this topic 5 years from now? And I imagine myself in the year 2028, and I know for a fact that I won't even remember this conversation. So I just let it go. Who cares if I let it go or if I fought you to the death? Either way, I don't want to do that. Like, I'm just going to let it go because I can't remember arguments I had in 2018, or when I want to go and do something, have an experience with one of my kids. Right. And you know how you take a trip and you're like, oh, this is so expensive. The hotel is $380 a night instead of $310 or whatever. Right. Just these things that stress us out, the finances. Well, my question I ask myself when I take a trip, like I asked myself this when me and my wife went to China in 2018, 2019. I said, yeah, it's expensive. I said, but 5 years from now, we won't remember any of these expenses, but we will remember whether or not we went to China. That's what we're going to remember. And here we are 5 years after our trip to China. I don't remember anything about how much it costs. I just remember, like Maya Angelou says, you remember how things made you feel. I remember feeling stressed a little bit about the cost, but I'm really happy I took that trip to China. I would have hated if I had allowed the cost to keep me from doing something that was going to be with me for the rest of my life. Okay, so wealth does require you to sort of practice and have a consistent commitment to maintaining that longer term vision. And the more you can do that, the wealthier you will typically be, because you can actually understand how easy it is to dominate the future if you're preparing for it early. In fact, I believe this so deeply that when I talk to my children on a regular basis, I tell them, when if I were to walk up to them and say, "What's the key to success?" They would say, "Preparation." Preparation is the key to success. Every time they make a mistake, like they're late getting in the car or something goes wrong, I say, preparation is the key to success. The people that win in life are the ones who prepare. And that translates to wealth. Like, so what do I mean? Well, it's 2023. Right now, nobody's thinking about 2028. People aren't going to think about 2028 until they actually get there. So if you're thinking about 2028 right now and preparing for 2028 right now in 2023, you're going to be set up to do really well in the year 2028. Just the same way you would have done well in 2023 if you started preparing for 2023 way back in 2018. Do you understand? So practice that longer term vision. Talk to your children about that. That'll make them wealthier and stronger long term. Entrepreneurship is just, I think that's just the most critical thing for Black people ever. My belief, my policy endorsement for any Black family out here is every Black child should know the basics of starting their own business. And that's basic stuff like, can you find something to sell and find a customer who needs it? That's kind of where it all starts. Literally, you don't even have to develop a product. They have people that buy stuff in China for $4 and sell it for 20. So you don't even have to make the product. You can literally sell somebody else's product. You can do an affiliate deal with somebody, right? You don't even have to create the product. But these basic skills, which I think should be taught in every Black-owned school in this country, is how do you acquire a customer? How do you sell the product to the customer? How do you know the buy low, sell high? How do you understand what your profit margin is if you sell this product, right? Those basic skills can not just help you survive a tough economic time, but that can help a child have far more money than you could ever get from a job. The average surgeon in America, cardiologist, I believe, makes about $350,000 to $400,000 a year. Let's say about 350. And even in cities like Chicago, where the cost of living is very high, there are cardiologists who make on average about 350. But let's go even higher. Let's say it's 400,000. It's really, really hard to become a cardiologist. I mean, you literally have to go to school for about a decade. You're going to miss a lot of sleep. You have a lot of pressure on you. People's lives are in your hands. It's a really difficult skill to obtain. Do you know how many entrepreneurs I've met just in the Black business school alone who make double that income just by selling one or two products? Literally by selling one or two products. And none of this required college. None of this required graduate school. You didn't have to do any heart surgeries. You don't have to learn any complex medical procedures. All you got to do is learn how to get something that people need and sell it to them, offer it to them. I can sell bottles of water and make more money than a surgeon if I can find out where the thirsty people are at and how I can get my water for $1 and sell it for $2. That's it. If I can do that, if I'm a water boy, like the Atlanta Water Boys, if I'm a water boy and I can set up and I know how to delegate and set up a system of distribution in order to sell my water to different locations and have a decent enough profit margin, I can make as much money as a surgeon. And it's true. There are water companies, bottled water companies that make billions of dollars, right? So this is the real thing. So why not take all of our kids and have them, as they're doing these intense football camps, basketball camps, and cheerleading camps, have them do equally intense entrepreneurship camps. Keep doing the football camp, keep doing the basketball camp, keep doing all those camps. Those are all fun. Sports are fun. But while they're doing the sport, they must be prepared for the sport of life. So if I'm running a football camp because I love football, or a basketball camp because I love basketball too. I can't run a cheerleading camp. I don't know how to do that. But if I'm running any of those camps, what I do is I make my camp unique by adding an entrepreneurship component and say, in the daytime, they're going to learn this. At nighttime, they're going to learn that. So when your child comes home to you, they're not just going to be great at football. They're going to be great at the game of life, because we know that football is a game that is played by children typically, and they're not going to make a nickel playing football, 99.9% of them, but all of them at some point when they're 30 years old are going to need money. They're going to have to take care of their families. They're going to have kids, all this other stuff. So we're going to really make sure that they win in the game of life as much as they're going to win in the game of football. If you do that, that right there flips every narrative on its head. So these are simple, easy to implement plans. These are not complex strategies. And if every child in our community understands those three things, then we're going to see a whole lot more success. So let me keep going. Let's jump forward a little bit here. Number 8, the 8th commandment is always planting seeds for the future. You have to plant seeds for the future. There's no person that's ever been wealthy that didn't understand the importance of planting seeds for the future. One thing about wealth is that wealth grows like a harvest, or grows like a plant or a flower or a seed or a tree. And this is mathematically true. All of the mathematical equations that we have that measure how wealth grows, all of them come from biology. They're just biological formulas that have been manipulated to make them fit a financial product, but it's really the same idea. And even more deeper than that, you can actually take the biology formulas and connect them to even simpler ideas that you've been familiar with your whole life. I'm not telling you anything new right now, by the way. I'm not telling you anything new. A lot of you have known basic things like if I'm in a car and the longer I drive, the farther I'll go. Right? That in physics or mathematics, they call that distance equals rate times time. Don't get scared. If math is not your thing, don't worry. I got you. Basically, you know that if you got to get to Uncle Louie's house and he lives 300 miles away and you're going to drive 60 miles an hour, that it's going to take about 5 hours to get to Uncle Louie's house. Well, how do you know that? Well, it's 300 miles. I'm going 60 miles an hour. 60 times 5 is 300. So it's going to take me 5 hours going 60 miles an hour to get to Uncle Louie's house. If I want to get there faster, I got to drive faster. Right? Do you follow me? Give me a yes if you're following this, because I don't want to talk over anybody's head, because I know sometimes math is intimidating for us. Okay. So we understand these things. We've always known these things. And I kid you not, those same equations that you use to get to Uncle Louie's house, when Uncle Louie's like, well, how long y'all gonna take to get here? What time y'all gonna get here? And you say, I'm gonna be there by 2 o'clock or whatever. Well, you did that because in your head, you knew how fast you were going and how many hours it would take for you to get there, right? Right. All of us have done this. That same equation is literally linked to, it's the cousin of the equations that are used to describe how a flower grows or how a plant grows. Because if you plant a tree in your backyard and it grows at a certain rate, and you give it a certain amount of time, it's going to grow to a certain size, right? Same thing, just like getting to Uncle Louie's house. And then it's the same way that money grows. If your money's growing at a certain rate, we call that like things like interest rates and discount factors or compound interest, whatever you want to call it, right? If it's growing at a certain rate, you give it a certain amount of time, it's going to grow to a certain size. So what is required for that to work, in order for you to have a lot of money, that means something has to be planted for a certain amount of time, and it has to grow at a certain rate, right? So effectively, the harvest that you have, like the amount of crops that you have, or the size of the plant that you grow, the financial plant that you grow, it's dependent on how long it's had to grow, and the rate of growth, but also more importantly, it's dependent on whether or not you even planted anything in the first place, right? In order for $1 to grow into $2 through compound interest, you have to plant the dollar. Right? In order for a seed to grow into a tree, you have to plant the seed. Right? In order for you to get to Uncle Willie's house in your car in 5 hours going 60 miles an hour, you got to get in the car. If you never get in the car, then it doesn't matter how fast you think you're going or how long you think you're driving. You're not even driving and you're not going any speed because you didn't even get in the car. So a lot of people don't have any wealth because they never got in the car. They never planted the seed. They never deposited the first dollar so that dollar even has a chance to grow into $2 or $3. Like, it's like, how can I expect my children to grow up to be strong and healthy if I never have a child? Right? If I never ever sleep with a woman or make a baby, or if every time my wife gets pregnant, I say, okay, let's terminate the pregnancy. Well, then nothing has a chance to grow. Right. So a lot of us don't have any. Here's the thing. I want to ask, and I ask in a way that doesn't make me sound like too much of a smart ass, because I'm not trying to be mean when I say it. But when people tell me they don't have anything, when they don't have any wealth or have any resources, my first question I want to ask them was, well, did you plant a seed? Like you say, well, I wanted to get to Uncle Willie's house by 2 o'clock and I didn't get there by 2 o'clock. I'm still not there yet. And I would say, well, did you get in the car? Did you know you need a vehicle to get to Uncle Willie's house? In that term, vehicle is very powerful. It's interesting that they call investments investment vehicles, because that's what it is. It's like, that vehicle is what gets you from point A to point B. That's what gets you from the land of poor people to the land of rich people. And a lot of people say, gosh, I wish I lived in the land of rich people, but they never ever got inside a vehicle. They never got a vehicle. Like if you say, well, did you invest in the stock market? Well, the stock market's a scam. I don't want to lose my money. Okay, all right, fine. But do you own any real estate? Well, no, I don't, I can't get the down payment. Okay, that's fine. That makes sense. A lot of people have that same problem. Well, did you ever increase your rate of income, at least maybe starting a business or something like that? Well, no, starting a business is risky and I don't want to do that because I get all that. That makes perfect sense. And it doesn't mean that you're any kind of a loser or that you're making horrible mistakes or anything. But at the end of the day, you can't have a harvest if you don't plant seeds. That's the point. In order to have a harvest, you must plant a seed. So when anybody says they don't have a harvest, I always ask, are you planting seeds? And the people that tend to have the biggest harvest are the ones who are planting all the time. Like, think about your friend think about people you've ever seen who are working out constantly, who are like trying to be like Olympic athletes, who are always in the gym 2-3 times a day, always lifting weights. Like let's say he's in the gym, he's lifting in the morning, lifting at night, lifting in the afternoons, and eating chicken and protein all day long and taking protein shakes and running 10 miles a day. What's that man going to look like compared to a guy who sits on the couch and, watches Netflix all day and eating potato chips? Those are going to be two very different men, right? Because one is going to have a harvest because he's constantly planting the seeds, or just like the student who's always studying or whatever. Now, the challenge that you have, this is why you got to be careful about what I call the financial leaks in a capitalist society. And actually, I call them financial leaks because that literally just came to me just now. I've never actually used that term before, but I'm going to use it right now. The financial leaks in a capitalist society come from the fact that Black people, you're stuck in this really awkward position through bad culture that's been given to you, where you actually are doing the amount of labor required to plant seeds, but because the labor is misguided, you're not getting a harvest from those seeds. I mean, imagine this. Imagine if you are planting seeds constantly and somebody else is getting the harvest. Like you're planting all these seeds and you're looking in your garden waiting for something to grow and nothing's growing, but everything's growing in your neighbor's garden. Like somehow through some magic, some interdimensional transfer, everything that you plant is growing in his garden. That's what capitalism does to you. That's the rope-a-dope that's pulled on you. This is why if I do it all over again, if I'm 20 years old again and I'm having kids and whatever with my wife or something, I'm not sending my kids to public school. Or if I do, I'm going to make sure when they come home, they get a proper education on how the world works. The public school system's designed to do that. It says, okay, we need a harvest, but we don't want to plant the seeds. We need the results of labor, but we don't want to do the work because rich people don't really want to do the work. They're like, okay, how do we trick poor people into working their butts off, working themselves literally into an early grave so that we can get richer? How do we get them to plant seeds so that we will get the harvest? Right? Think about that. Process this. Think about this. This is the biggest scam in America. Isn't the stock market? It's not just the crappy politicians. The biggest scam in America is this thing called a job. And for a lot of people, a job is the biggest scam in America because that is the only place you can go where you are working 40 hours a week for 50 years, and then you can die broker than you were when you first started. You can plant that many seeds and have no harvest, have a negative harvest. How in the hell does that happen? Well, it's social engineering. It's brainwashing. It's what they plant inside your skull when you're a little kid, and when they're teaching you how you're supposed to proceed as an appropriate American, which makes me very happy that I was the kid in school who broke all the rules. I was on detention all the time. I would get in trouble all the time because I questioned everything. I still do. I'm not a rule follower, and I don't want to be, and never want to be a rule follower. I make up the rules. If the rule don't make sense, I'm not following the rule. Okay, so ultimately you got to learn how to break those rules. Okay, and so effectively you've got everything that you need. In a way, I would almost think of it like, imagine like it's like if you have a gun that has high caliber bullets, and let's say you get $2 every time you hit the mark. right? But instead of hitting the mark, you're shooting your bullets in the air. So they're still good bullets. They're high velocity. You're pulling the trigger a lot, but the bullets are going in the air. They're not hitting the right target, right? And so effectively, what I would say to you is that the work ethic is there. I think Black people work hardworking Black people are very, very hardworking people. I think we work harder than anybody else. And so if you just take that same work ethic and you just say, okay, I'm going to apply that work ethic to things that benefit me and the people I care about, starting with myself, my family, and my community, and just make sure that you're looking at the whole process, right? When you're putting in the input, you got to look at the output, right? When you're planting the seed, you got to say, well, okay, when I plant this seed, who's going to get the harvest? When I spend this dollar and I spend it at Walmart versus the Black-owned business, who's going to benefit from this dollar that I spent, right? If I go and I get up and I work my butt off this week, who's benefiting from this labor? If I'm paying a mortgage or paying rent or something, who's going to get the wealth from this bill that I pay every month? If you're thinking about the system all the way to the end, then you can make sure that you get the people who plant the seeds are the ones who also get the harvest, which really, unfortunately, this will never happen all throughout America because that would really kind of undermine the entire capitalist system. That's what the pandemic did. The pandemic was this time where everybody suddenly reflected on their lives and thought about how much time they've been brainwashed into spending on the corporate plantation and how much time they were missing with their loved ones and how much time they spent not living their best life and not doing the things they actually wanted to do. And once people got a taste of that freedom, they didn't want to go back. So now they start having corporations start saying, oh, wait a minute, we need workers to do all the work so we can keep building wealth. So what they did was they started forcing them to come back to the office. Those who don't have a capital base, you're going to have to come back. And they also started, what else they started doing? Oh, they shut off the deferment of student loans. So once they start requiring people to pay student loans again, that's going to force a lot of people back to the office again. And it's also going to end up affecting consumer spending, which is going to lead us into the next mild recession that we're going to have. So effectively, again, going back to what I was mentioning earlier about the importance of Black children having a capital base at an early age, you absolutely have to do that. You have to make sure that your kids have some capital and some training so they can have the right to have freedom. Freedom in America is not something that's just given away to people. Nobody has freedom just because. Juneteenth, we talked about what Juneteenth really was. Juneteenth, you didn't really actually get free on Juneteenth. They just told the unpaid slaves that now you get a chance to be paid slaves. And a vast majority of them became sharecroppers, which translated later on into people that are stuck on the corporate plantation. Now you're just a corporate sharecropper and you feel like it's a little bit different because it feels fancier and you have your college degree and you wear a suit every day, but you're still kind of a sharecropper. If you're running hard and you're not getting ahead and you have to keep going to work because you're so buried in debt that you can't walk away from the job, and debt has become a type of slavery for you, like student loans, that kind of makes you a sharecropper because they're doing the same thing to you that they did to the sharecroppers. They will put them in so much debt that they could never leave that job. All right. So ultimately you have to understand these traps and you got to keep your kids out of those traps so that they can actually live the life that they're supposed to live. All right. So what I'm going to do is, since I kind of just sort of went on some little tangents with this, I'm actually going to skip forward a little bit. And I want to talk about your children as an asset. One of the points that I've really sort of accentuated in some of the public conversations I've had about children and family and everything else. And I love talking about this stuff. I don't care that some people don't get it, why I talk about it. I love talking about this because one of the things I really want smart people to understand, and all of you are smart because you're here, is that your children are just literally like that is one of your power plays. That's one of your gold mines. That's something that will make the family richer, wealthy, and powerful. The kids are amazing little investments because if you invest in them with this asset called love and time and attention, then they're going to be the most loyal, the most consistent assets that you'll ever have, especially when you get into old age, when you start getting tired and you get sick, or you have to pass the business to somebody, or whatever it is that you have to do. Those kids are going to be the ones who come through for you. So what I have said to young people is don't fall into society's trap. The trap that America is in right now is that America did not keep reproducing at the same level that it did after the baby boom. After the baby boom, which ended in the 1960s, Americans got into, free love. Like we want to have lots of sex, but we don't want to actually have kids. So they started encouraging each other not to have children, and children were seen as kind of a burden, and being a mom was looked down upon, and then fathers started saying, why would I spend time hanging around kids, taking care of somebody else's kids when I could be out here, sleeping with women and smoking weed and doing whatever I want. Well, now America, because the reproduction rate has dropped so much, we're actually on an economic decline that's going to last well over 100 years. So this century, the United States' economic growth is going to stagnate. It's going to start to get lower and lower because young people are your source of productivity on a national level. And it's also a source of productivity on a local level. When you have families that have lots of hardworking young people that are all churning away in the family business, great things happen because young people have energy and ambition and enthusiasm, and they just bring something that really helps you get stuff done. And so one of the funny little wealth hacks that I have, I just tell guys, when they kind of say, well, you married a lady with 3 kids, why would you do that? That's a lot of work. I'm like, yeah, it is a lot of work because kids get on your nerves sometimes. But guess what? Guess who's helping run my business? They help me run my business. If you guys go to my store and buy my book or whatever you buy, they're going to be the ones who ship you that book. And because we made a deal. I said, look, I'll show you how to run a business. I'll make sure you never have to work for anybody, but you're gonna have to earn it. So here's your first job. You can come in here and I'll show you what to do. And they help us run the business. They help their mother run her business, right? So kids, and they're teenagers now. So imagine what they would be able to do when they're 35 and 40 years old with law degrees and MBAs and all this other stuff, right? So basically, what I would encourage you to do is understand that that you live in a society that teaches you that children are what is referred to in economics as a luxury item. A luxury item is like a Gucci belt. It's something that you buy, or a Coach purse. It's something that you buy when you want to just waste money, when you have plenty of money laying around and you just buy yourself, a Lamborghini or something. You don't expect the Lamborghini to actually be an investment. It's just an expense, and it's a high expense, and you do it because you can afford it. Children are seen as a luxury item in America. That was not always the case. If you go back, 150 years, children were seen as a necessity. The people that had farms, like my friend Mary Stoddard, who's coming to the All Black National Convention this year. And by the way, I saw some of you were asking for the URL for the convention. It's going to be all black. It's allblacknationalconvention.com. So if you have a black-owned business and you want to sponsor something, we'll promote you. We'll share our promo with you. Just go to allblacknationalconvention.com. All those options are there, and you can also get a pass. But anyway, Mary Stoddard, when her parents had 17 children, they didn't have those kids because they just wanted the expense of raising a bunch of children. They lived on a farm. And because they lived on a farm, having more children meant having more laborers that could help you actually run that farm. Okay. So this was something that was very practical, and it made a lot of sense at that time. So now, though, we look at it very, very different because children are very expensive, and the average cost of raising a child is about $300,000 per child. And so effectively, when I look at people that have lots of kids, and they don't think about how their reproductive choices are going to impact their economic outcomes, I help them understand that, if you're a guy that has 5 kids with 5 women, and each child costs $300,000 to raise, that's kind of like being $1.5 million in debt. Like you literally, because because of whatever choices you made in terms of sex and reproduction, you're now over $1 million in debt. And then the worst part about that is that you're not even going to get the benefits of that debt because you have not properly managed what could be a highly effective asset for your life. Right? Like you're a guy who's been trained falsely to believe that kids are a waste of time, that you should be living your best life. You should be out chasing women. You should be, your liquor and your weed and your women and whatever, and not thinking about these kids. And then you get older, you hit 40, 45, you start reflecting on your life. Then next thing you know, you have a health problem or two when you're approaching 50, 55 years old. And those kids don't want anything to do with you because you didn't invest in them at all. So you have no help. You don't, your kids don't come through for you during retirement. You're running a business. Nobody's there to help you. You have to pay people, and people that you pay are not the same as people that love you. When I have people that work with me, like one thing I'll tell you is that My number one business partner that helped me make millions of dollars throughout my career was my little brother. And my little brother was an investment that I made reluctantly. When I was 12 years old, my mother did something that just almost sounds abusive to some people. She literally had me babysit him for 40 hours a week while she was at work because they could not afford a babysitter. So, like a lot of you, I literally had to basically be my brother's second father. I raised him like my own son. I changed his diapers. I had to get up at 7 a.m. in the morning with him. I couldn't leave the front porch because of this baby, and it drove me crazy. So I took him with me everywhere I went. Well, guess what? We formed a bond, and that bond is so powerful that we still work together every day to this day. My brother, without my brother, I never could have done the things that I did in this world. My brother was the guy who stood next to me when everybody else had abandoned me. My brother was the guy who supported me and worked with me even when I didn't have any money to pay anybody. He was still right there. Everyone else leaves. Everyone else, that's the dilemma of being like so-called famous or kind of famous or pseudo famous or whatever this is, internet famous. It's like people want to be around you, but a lot of people are around you because they can get something from you. My brother was just there because we were attached, like family, right? And so effectively, what I want you to understand, and I can give you more examples. Like I can talk to you about even my own parents. Now they're older. My father took care of me. He didn't have to. He became my bonus father, or some would call it a stepfather. We never use the word step. And there's nothing I wouldn't do for this man. There's literally nothing. Like I'm literally his bull. I'm literally his workhorse. Like, what do you need, Daddy? You need a car? Let me get you a car. We want to pay off the house? Let's pay off the house. We got to get to the doctor? Let's get to the doctor. You need a maid? Let's get you a maid, right? And that is something that has become, I looked at that and I said, wow, this is interesting. I told my siblings, I said, we've become part of our parents' retirement plan. Even if they had no money in their 401k, even if they had no money in Social Security, if they had no money in savings, they got 3 children that they poured into and raised in a certain way where we're loyal to each other and we're loyal to the family, and we will fight like hell to make sure that they are protected and preserved in every way imaginable. Right? So how often do we talk about this? You don't hear people talk about that. Why? Well, because I don't think most people have wealth vision. They can't see long term. So you have guys who, unfortunately, they have big platforms. Some of them are goofy comedians and just mean to women. They say terrible things and they say women are a waste of time and black women are stupid and these kids, and why would you want to take care of somebody else's kids? That makes you a sucker. And that's all ego driven. It's ego driven because it's like, well, why would I be a sucker and raise a child that doesn't have a father? When I could be out here and I could be free and doing whatever. That makes me an idiot. That makes me a sucker. And the thing about it is that when you're talking about building a community or building a family, you can't think like that. You can't think in an egocentric sort of way. You can't think about just yourself. You have to be committed to something bigger than yourself. And so my father was a guy who could have easily had, lived in the streets. He had a heroin addiction when he was 19 years old. He came back from Vietnam. It probably would have been a whole lot more fun to go out into the street, hang out with women, and use heroin all day than it was to take the responsibility of being a husband and father at the age of 22 years old and walk away from the drugs and focus on family. And I think about that all the time when I see this man and I say, wow, look at what you did for me. Let me see what I can do for you. Okay. So what I would say to you is that is don't underestimate the power of the children that you pour into. And I'm not just talking about children that you gave birth to. I'm talking about any child. The Black community is full of, there's $1 trillion opportunity in all these children out here who've been abandoned by their daddies. There really is. It's $1 trillion opportunity for everybody. These kids are looking for love. They're looking for guidance. They're looking for support. All you got to do is be nice, have a conversation, give them some words of encouragement, give them some guidance. And if you work this right, they can be great assets to you as you go on in your life. I have probably about 15 pseudo adopted kids who call me Uncle Boyce or Papa Boyce or whatever, and I love it. I take it all in because I'm like, this is great. This is love from a young Black person who's gonna take care of me when I get old and tired, and they're already helping me out now. So understand that this is a big part of wealth. Family is critical to wealth. When you're investing, most of your investments are not in the form of money. It's an investment in the type of capital that will help you get what you need, whatever that is. And it doesn't always have to be a selfless activity. Sometimes it can be a little selfish. Like sometimes, like it's okay to say, well, you know what, I'm going to really take care of these kids and hope that one of them will take care of me when I get older. I think it's okay to say that. But at the same time, you have to have that balance. And I don't know if a lot of people have the balance. And so, I don't know if I can help everybody see that, but that's what I've seen in terms of wealth and which families turn out the most economically successful. So let me move on. Let me move on to commandment number 9. Okay, so here's number 9. This is the 9th commandment in the book. And so number 9 is leaving a worthy inheritance. I'm going to go ahead and say this. Every child in our community, if we want our community to succeed, in the B1 community, I can't talk about the whole Black community. A lot of the Black community is very tainted, almost to the point of being poisoned by racist culture. So I'm not really saying the Black community. I'm not Malcolm X or Martin Luther King. I can't get every Black person to do the same thing. I don't have that ability. I have some Black people who will fight me tooth and nail, and I ain't got the time to fight back with them. I'm just working with the people that want something different. But I believe that the B1 community can kind of be a beacon of light in terms of really getting ahead of not just other Black people, really ahead of the entire world in terms of wealth and understanding and wealth building. And I know this for a fact because the things that I'm talking to you guys about here are not simple baby concepts. I can make them sound like baby concepts, but this is cutting edge stuff. This is more advanced than what the Jewish community is doing. This is more advanced than what the Asian community is doing. This is more because again, I taught people like this, right? So what I want you to understand is when you talk about inheritance, I just really think that as a core value, you want to understand that everybody that's here has to leave something positive that shows that they were here. Right? They have to leave something positive that shows that they were here. Like, and the question becomes, what are you leaving that's positive to show that you were here? It can't be a bunch of debt. It can't be a bunch of children that nobody knows about. It can't be a bunch of problems. It can't be a bunch of trauma. It can't be a bunch of chaos. There has to be enough discipline and fortitude to say, I'm going to make sure that everybody who engages with me that I care about is going to say, my life is better because this person was here. Right. So when you're at your funeral, one way to visualize this is visualize your funeral. And I want you to say, at my funeral, what do I want people to say? Do I want people to say that my life was better because this man was in my life? That's literally what I said to our son. I was explaining manhood to him. I said, I think that if I was to give you a simple instruction on what manhood means, it means that as a man, knowing the power you have as a man, we've seen the power of men. Right? Men have the power to elevate. We can change the world. We can conquer countries. We can do all kinds of amazing things because we have masculinity and testosterone, and we can scare people, and we're big and we're strong, and we have all these things that we're aggressive to, all these things. Right. And you saw this, right? You saw, like, for example, you see that the power of a man can be used for good or evil. Like when you saw that man in Chicago who said, say one more thing and I'm going to knock you out. And then he starts punching this lady in the face violently because he was mad. That was his masculinity used in a terrible, terrible way, right? But the thing is that same masculinity can be used in a very positive and powerful way, right? That same masculinity that was used to beat this lady within an inch of her life could have been used to make her life better or to do something wonderful for her son or something great for the community. But somebody misguided that. That energy was sent in the wrong direction. So what I would say to you is that when you talk about leaving an inheritance, I think everybody should just sort of, as a matter of self-respect and pride, commit to the idea that when I leave here, somebody's going to be in a better position than they would have been if I was not here. Just that real basic idea. What's a simple thing you could do? You can just go right now. If you don't have life insurance, just go get some. It doesn't cost a whole lot. There's a website. It's the blackinsurancenetwork.com, theblackInsuranceNetwork.com. Yolanda Spivey runs that platform. That's where I get all my insurance policies. You can tell Yolanda I sent you. And a lot of insurance policies don't cost a lot of money. That is a massive, massive wealth hack that is very easy to implement, doesn't cost a whole lot. What else can you do? Well, some sort of estate plan is beneficial. It's not hard to put together an estate plan. You don't need a lawyer to do it. There's a lady named Isha. I forgot her last name, but she's going to work with us in the Black Business School. And I invited Isha to the All Black National Convention because Isha has worked with a lot of private wealthy families to help them form estate plans. And she really wants to work with the Black community because she said most of the people that she works with don't look like us. So she will be at the All Black National Convention. I would also say that they your children inherit other things from you besides your money. You see examples like if you watch that show Succession, you'll see that money isn't everything, right? You have some wealthy families that leave a lot of dysfunction and pain and trauma with children. This is where things like emotional regulation or some sort of healing is really important. A lot of us need therapy. I think that's really important too. All right, so leaving a worthy inheritance, I think, is absolutely critical. And by the way, some of you are asking, where can you get the slides? If you want to get a hard copy of the slides, you can actually go to the online store. I put the link in the chat where you guys can go there and use the code book club. If you use the code word book club, you can actually get a discount. I think 30% off anything in the store. So the cost of the whole packet is about $40. Or $44, and then it takes 30% off that price. And the reason is because it's 100 slides, and it costs quite a bit to print them all out. So I'll put this in the chat and staple it so you guys can feel free to grab a copy if that's something that is of interest to you, if this training is beneficial to you. All right, so let me keep going. Let me drill back in. Let me share my screen again. So leaving a worthy inheritance should be something that is an absolute mandatory requirement for anybody that wants to say that they are a wealth builder. There's something that we put together in the Black Business School called a wealth rectangle that helps you visualize what wealth looks like and how it operates, and why wealth is a team sport that grows based on the number of years that you're putting into it, and why it must be a generational process. So if you look at this chart right here, what you see a rectangle, right? It says the Black Wealth Rectangle. The width of the rectangle is the number of teammates you have. That's the size of your family, your group. Remember, your relatives don't have to be people that you're related to. They can just be people that agree with you, that are on the same code with you, that are in your economic gang. You have to be gang affiliated. So this is your number of teammates. So the more teammates you have, the wider the rectangle is. So if you have one teammate, if you do what a lot of Black people are trained to do, which is to do it all by themselves, rugged individualism and all that other nonsense, then your rectangle isn't very wide. It's very, very thin. It's like a pencil. But if you have, if you're able to manage relationships and work together, then your wealth rectangle becomes very broad, because it's you, your spouse, your cousins, your children, people in your investment club. And a lot of this really comes down to learning a vital skill that often gets ignored, which is just simple relationship management. I talk to my kids, and when my youngest was saying that she was worried about going to a dance competition where she didn't know anybody, and I said, well, it's easy to make friends. I said, I gave her some tips. I said, go up to a girl you don't know and just give her a compliment. Be a nice person. Tell her that you like her outfit. Tell her you like her hair. People love that. People love it when you give them a compliment, and then next thing you know, she'll want to be your friend. And then, so be a good person, right? So some of this stuff is really basic, simple stuff, right? But then there's more complicated strategies you can apply. Also, because trauma is so high in the community, trauma causes us to be afraid of each other and to be scared of each other and to be, to naturally sort of go into conflict mode, right? Like, so for example, that incident in Chicago, my wife is a trauma expert. She's a certified trauma specialist. All she saw in that whole video where that guy's punching that lady in the head was trauma. She said he's traumatized as a human being, so he got easily triggered, because a lot of people could be in that same situation. They wouldn't be punching a lady in the head, right? She's traumatized because she's yelling back and forth, and then she's saying, and then they're like going to get the gun, right? So everything was escalated because all these traumatized people were trying to figure out a way to deal with each other. They went to war. Right, where there are a lot of people that could be in that same situation, play the role of every single character in that situation, and would have had a very different reaction. So trauma makes it hard for you to trust. Trauma makes you easily triggered. Trauma breaks down, and it causes you to lose $1 million opportunities. One example that I was given in the Black Business School is New Edition. I didn't even know this at the time, that one of the members of New Edition was a student in the Black Business School, and he comes to stock market training class every Tuesday. And I didn't even know this, right? But I would talk about New Edition. I said, look at New Edition right now. New Edition, if you follow New Edition for the last 30 years, you'll know that New Edition has been through a lot of ups and downs. You know that they had 3 or 4 artists that went solo: Bobby Brown, Ralph Transvant, Johnny Gill, and is that it? Robert, I think those are the 3. And they had the talent, so they kind of all did their own thing. And then you had the other 3, Bell Biv DeVoe, who didn't have nearly as much talent. And what was fascinating to me was that Bell Biv DeVoe, they had the group that had the least amount of talent. I don't think any of those guys could really sing that well, to be honest with you. I have to be honest. They actually had what could be considered to be the most success or close to it, right? Belle Biv DeVoe was really big. Thought it was me, never trust a big button to smile. That girl is poison, right? And a lot of this is because Michael Bivins was a catalyst. He's what I call an economic playmaker. I met Michael Bivins. I interviewed him years ago. He's the guy who can see opportunity and possibility where other people don't see anything. I imagine, I'm willing to bet you that Michael was the guy who said, okay, I can't sing like Ralph. I'm not as handsome as Johnny. I don't know how to dance like Bobby. But if we all get together and we put this cool factor together, we can become successful too. And so anyway, sometimes like those economic playmakers are very valuable people to have in your group or in your family. Like I like to think I'm a playmaker for my family. When I was 17, I got my first job. I was selling these knives with this company called Vector Marketing Corporation. And they were these overpriced knives, but they were really high quality, but they were super expensive. It's called Cutco. Some of y'all might have heard of the company. And I was so excited when I got this job. I called my mother at 17 and I said, Mama, I think I want to be that person. You have that one person in your family that takes the whole family to another level. I want to be that person, right? So in my mind, I was like, I want to try to be the economic playmaker, right? Another example, even when I hear stories about how the rap group the Ghetto Boys was formed, I became friends with Willie D. We were really good friends. He was in my wedding. And when I hear the story of the Ghetto Boys, I said, oh, I get it. You're the playmaker. You're the one who told Bushwick how to define his character so that people would be scared of this short little guy who could rap and but might kill you after the song was over. And then you help Scarface pick out his name and develop his persona and help them understand what they could actually create together. So you have these playmakers, right? But here's the thing I want you to understand too. Go back to New Edition. What I admire about New Edition is that despite the fact that they had all their ups and downs, they had all their disagreements, somebody had the wisdom to say, we're better together than we are apart. Now we're 50 and, we can't, go solo like we used to. Young people have kind of taken over the music industry, but we've got these older people who still love what we do. And if we put on those old fancy suits and come up with a couple of dance routines and even get Bobby's big chubby butt out here where he's huffing and puffing, trying to still sing My Prerogative, people will pay money for that. That is a product that we can sell, but we can only sell it if we work together. So whenever I see New Edition on that stage, making another $1 million a night, doing shows all across the country, I am so proud of them because they literally are representing the essence of group economics and all the stuff that I talk about in my book. That is their economic family. A lot of you wouldn't go to a New Edition concert if they didn't have all 6 of those guys there. If they only had 2 or 3 of them, you'd say, that's not New Edition anymore, right? So effectively, they were wise enough to figure that out. And so when you look at New Edition as the positive example, I want you to think about all the other groups that you used to love that are no longer here, that can't perform because they don't like each other anymore, or somebody got on drugs, or somebody died or something, or they just are fighting so much that they don't care about making money. Because I've seen that too. I know about one group that was very popular in the 90s who literally had a $50 million deal on the table. And all the deal required was for them to get together and just do a podcast, not even go on tour, just do a podcast. And they couldn't even do that. They were literally like, I don't want to work with that guy. I can't stand him. Right. So effectively, relationships are directly connected to wealth, and your wealth rectangle is directly connected to the number of teammates that you have all working for the same objective. And then the longitude, or the length of the rectangle, is defined by time. So the number of years, the more years you have working toward wealth, the more wealth you have, just like driving a car down the road. No matter how slow or how fast I'm going, the longer I drive, the farther I'm going to go, right? Do you get what I'm saying? So when you have wealthy families, I'm talking about the most elite, wealthiest families out here, a lot of times you'll see where they've extended their time by doing it intergenerationally, right? My length of time on this journey isn't limited by my lifespan. It's limited by my great grandkids' lifespan. And what I do is I make sure that while I'm here, before I'm done, that everybody behind me understands the assignment and understands the legacy that they must maintain and uphold. So we're doing things to help them understand who they are, what they're supposed to protect, what effort was put into building this, right? This is the family farm. We've been here since 1904. That we make corn. This is how we make our money. This is our wealth. Here's the investment advisor. This is how you protect it. And then you're training them in that system, right? So you're replacing a smart family, a wealthy family, in my view, is a family that replaces the educational system with a family system. But either way, you have to have some system that you're committed to so that you'll understand, okay, this is what I'm supposed to preserve and protect. So the more years you have in the wealth rectangle and the more teammates you have, the bigger your wealth rectangle is. Do you see? So here's what a wealth rectangle looks like in its worst form. A wealth rectangle in its worst form looks like a pencil because it has no width. You have one person, one single mom trying to do it all by herself. And then the wealth rectangle is also very short. So it's like a short little pin because it's just, she's going to work her butt off until she's about 65 or 70. And when she dies, and then she dies, and then it's over. That's it. So this is black wealth. And that big rectangle on the screen, that's big, rich, white family wealth. That's the Vanderbilts. That's the Rockefellers, right? That's that's the Ford family, right? So that's what I want B1 families to look like. I want you to think about your wealth rectangle and just know your teammates don't have to be related to you. Some of your relatives are on another planet. They were indoctrinated into a completely different culture. They're going to be hard to work with, but you can find other people that in fact, now at this point, I can definitely say in the Black Business School, we have trained thousands and thousands and thousands of people on powernomics ideas. And a lot of these ideas that are in this book, there are so many people out here that you can form connections with, form investment clubs with, form marriages with, have children with. I love it when people come to the convention and they meet a nice girl and start making babies. I'm like, this is great. You're building an institution off of this, and I'm glad to just be a tiny part of this. In a way, I'm like the financial pastor, and I like kind of giving my, my support to say, okay, this is what you do. Like, let's get the kids ready. Let's start now because white people are coming. Racism's coming. All this oppression that keeps us enslaved, it's always coming. Capitalism will never stop being oppressive. White people will never stop being white. Racist people will never stop being racist. That's never going to occur. So instead of putting our energy into hoping that white people will become nicer to us or that we can convince society to stop treating us badly, I think it's better that we learn how to treat ourselves a little bit better. Okay, so let me keep going. Let's move on. So the next slide here after the wealth rectangle, is. All right, so let's look at this contrast here, right? You see a big fat wealth rectangle on the left. This is the wealth of lots of people working together across several generations. A wealth rectangle of like one person doing it by themselves is that little white line on the screen that it doesn't have any width or any length. The dimensionality of that white line, the power of that white line can't compare to the power of that big, fat, long, gigantic, thick bar that's right there, right? Or if you think about and here's the thing too, a lot of big wealth rectangles, like a lot of wealthy institutions that exist today, they started off with very humble beginnings. Very humble beginnings. UPS, for example, was started in 1919 by two teenagers who were delivering packages on their bicycles, right? So what I want you to do is I want you to think about that every time you wonder if your little so-called raggedy business is ever going to amount to anything. It's going to really be as great as you choose for it to be, or as much as you're willing to commit for it to become. Not every business is going to become an empire, right? So we know that's not true, but really the amount of energy that's poured into that thing is what's going to determine how great it is. But the thing about it is that it's also a self-fulfilling prophecy, because if we can't sort of have the vision to believe in something that we cannot yet see, then we're not going to invest in something that isn't real. So you have to have a little bit of not just wealth vision, but almost to the point of a little bit of delusion. You have to be a little bit delusional to be able to just kind of say, I'm going to ignore what's out there now, and I'm going to look at what could be if I pour into this thing, right? Which does technically make you a little bit crazy. I am a crazy, weird person. I know these things, and I'm very proud of that because I don't pay a lot of attention to what I see in the world right now. I only use what's in the world to point to what the world could be, right? I say, let's start here and let's go to where we actually could be. And I'm committed to building that world, and I believe we're going to do that. So characteristics of a wealthy inheritance might be what rich people call buy, borrow, and die. That's where they buy stuff They borrow against their assets. They don't actually sell anything because they don't want to pay taxes. And then they just die. And then what happens is the IRS gives them a massive benefit by basically saying, okay, your kids don't have to pay taxes on all the capital gains you accumulated in your life. They can actually just start with a new tax basis. So that's how a lot of wealthy people get away without paying taxes on their estates. They pay a little bit, but they don't pay much. Life insurance policies, that's great. It's a great way to get money directly transferred. Real estate, stocks, bonds, and crypto. So the test that you might give yourself is to ask yourself, can your kids quit their job if they want to, right? And so if you have children or grandchildren, I would say, what can I do to make sure they never have to work for anybody? It's very easy. Go to my website, boycewatkins.com. There's the $5 a day investing plan. If you do that for a newborn child and you do maybe $10 a day, your child will be in such a good financial position by the age of 25 or 30. They'll never have to work for anybody, especially if they know how to preserve the money that they have. And again, this is where the other training comes into play in terms of their discipline. So that's where you have to do the supplemental work. You have to do the extra stuff, right? Because if your child is just trained to be some goofy materialist person like the rappers or whatever, then they're going to take all that money. They're going to go buy a bunch of Birkin bags and red bottoms and whatever. And next thing you know, they'll be broke again. So ultimately, this is where things like self-esteem and all that come into play, because people who have a lot of self-esteem don't really need a lot of external stuff to validate them. They don't need if you're confident in who you are, you don't need to drive a fancy car to be somebody. You say, oh, I already am somebody, or you don't need to go and have, a Gucci bag in order to feel like you're significant. You might like Gucci bags or a Coach bag, right? My wife has a Coach purse, so there's nothing wrong with enjoying that luxury stuff. But there are some people who will spend their last dollar to get that stuff because there's something inherent in that purchase that makes you feel more worthy as a human being, right? That makes you feel like you just, okay, I've made it, I am somebody, etc. And the problem is that what's happened there is that they have played the mind game with you. Selling luxury items is very psychological, by the way. There's a whole psychological theory on how they convince people that you have to go overspend all this money. A lot of these people that own these brands, they're not going to pay retail for that stuff, but anyway, so to some extent, they're selling you your humanity. And if you go watch that video on YouTube called "How to Sell to the Negro," anybody see that video? That video really explains in pretty sordid detail, what's really going on, like how they would sell expensive things to Black people, by basically convincing Black people, like, yeah, if you buy this, then you'll be somebody, right? So they're kind of selling you your humanity. That's what they're doing. They're saying, if you give us money, we'll let you be like us. You'll be human like the rest of us. And the thing is that you were somebody before you were born. And I really just need you to make sure you know that. You don't need to be manipulated into giving your money away to white people, because really, what can they really sell you that makes you better than what you already were, right? What in the world, who told you that them accepting you and seeing you differently somehow makes you different? And that translates into a lot of other stuff that's very frustrating, like us telling white people that Black Lives Matter. Well, don't we already know that Black Lives Matter? Why do I have to tell you that Black Lives Matter? Like, they're not coming to us and saying, hey, you do know white lives matter, right? You do know white lives matter. I don't see most white people trying to convince me that their life matters. But there's something about us where we're like, okay, I'm not somebody until you see me. Once you see me, then I become somebody. And what I really am encouraging is you seeing yourself. And this directly links to economics, because if you can't see yourself, then what's going to happen is you're going to sell yourself because you don't value yourself. We tend to sell the things that we think are cheap. We tend to sell the things that we give away, the things that we don't value. We gave away things like hip hop music. We give away our money on a regular basis. We give away our time. We give away our labor. We give away our love. We give away a lot of things. You think about it. A woman who grows up with low self-esteem is going to sell herself or give herself away to men who are not worthy of her. A woman who grows up with very high self-esteem is not going to find herself in cheap, terrible relationships on a regular basis, because she's going to say, no, I'm worthy. I shouldn't even be here. This is not even a place I should be. Right. So the last thing I'm going to show you guys before we finish up tonight, it looks like we have to maybe do another session to do the last commandment, but I just wanted to I just wanted to go through it in the best way that I could. And I hope that this approach was helpful to you. I know that sometimes I always say to myself, I'll say something like, oh yeah, I'm going to cover this and I'm only going to spend 5 minutes on this and 10 minutes on that. But then sometimes the spirit pushes me to talk about something a little bit longer and to nail down a point. So I'll just make it up by doing another session with you guys. But here's what I want you to see with the $5 a day investing plan. And this is something you can pick up on my website, boycewatkins.com. And I want you to look at where your child's wealth or your grandchild's wealth will be, your niece, nephew, whoever you do this for, where their wealth will be at certain stages of their lives. This is the master plan. This is the game plan that will ensure that they never have to work for anybody. So you see, after 10 years, the number is very, very low. It's about after 10 years, I want to say it's a little more than 20, I think $29,000, a little bit less than 30,000. Right there, even at the 10-year mark, they're doing better than most Americans. If you go to the average 25-year-old and you say, do you have $29,000 in liquid assets that you can tap into right now in case you have a financial emergency? They will tell you no. They will tell you no. Let me know if you can see this chart. Can you see this? Do you see the 10 or after 10 years? So right there, your 10-year-old has more liquid wealth than most 25, 30-year-olds. In fact, there are a lot of 40, 50-year-olds who don't have that. Okay. So right there in the first decade of their life, you have already blessed them in an unbelievable way. And here's the thing. I set the $5 a day standard because I get sometimes I have people that try to argue with me. And honestly, sometimes I feel like going in the direction of John Heinrich Clark, who said, I only argue with my equals, everyone else I teach, but I don't want to be arrogant and say, you're not my equal. You are my equal, but in finance, I know what I'm talking about. I'm just not going to waste my time arguing with people who disagree. I just bless. George Fraser uses this term. He says, bless them and release them. So I bless and release you. You know, if you think your other strategy is going to work better, then please do that. But this is, but I set $5 as the low standard because I said, what is something that Black people regularly buy that costs more than $5 or $10? And I thought about things like fried chicken or at Popeyes or maybe a McDonald's value meal. And so what happened was when people would keep telling me that I was being delusional by teaching finance to Black people because they would say, well, Black people can't afford to invest. Right. I thought about something that I've always known, which is that we tend to be able to afford the things we want, but we can't afford the things that we need. Right. So you'll have people, my friend that worked in the welfare office would talk about people that would buy $100 shoes for their kids or buy a big screen TV, but then come in and beg for money they need for food or to pay their rent, right? And so this is obviously a mindset. So I picked $5 a day and said, what would happen if you invested $5 a day? And let's say you knew nothing about investing and you put all your money in the S&P 500. All you did every week was on autopilot buy into some S&P 500 index fund like the Vanguard fund, Victor Oscar, VOO, that's the ticker symbol, VOO, or SPY. And you just did that every week on autopilot and you never sold your stock. Well, on average, based on history, you would have about $29,000 for your child after 10 years. Remember, $5 is the low bar. So if you really want to go hard for your kids and you got the money, why not do $10 a day? $5 a day is $150 a month. I understand. For some of us, that's a lot of money. But don't forget, the average car note is well over $700 a month. There are some people who spend over $1,000 a month on their car, on their damn car. So imagine if we loved our children as much as we love our cars. Imagine if every parent just decided, you know what, I may not be the best parent, but my kid is worth more than a car note. If that were true, then these numbers start spiking. These numbers start spiking. So if we were to invest, in our kids, what we would find is that these numbers like are literally the bare minimum, right? So if you did $10 a day instead of $5, instead of 29,000 after the age of 10 in the 5th grade, your child has 58,000. If you did $20 a day instead of $5, on average, your child has over $100,000 and they're 10 years old. So right there, by the age of 10, because you chose to play the long game, because you chose to make investments in your children are better off than 95% of all white kids by the 5th grade. You can't run around with the whole like, woe is me Black stories anymore. You can't talk about, I can't, he won't be able to pay his bills because a white man's got his foot on his neck. All those the trauma Olympics that Black people go through where we compare stories about how poor we were, that doesn't apply. Your kid that has over $100,000 liquid, just $20 a day, $20 a day. A lot of people spend $20 a day on lunch. Just takes a little bit of discipline. Not, but again, I'm not saying go to 20, but I'm saying some of you can afford it. $20 a day is $600 a month. That's still not more than the average car note that Black people spend on a new car. That's still not a car note. I need you to sit on that for a minute. I haven't even got to the good stuff yet, but I want you to sit on that first part. Right there, you've changed everything. That means that boy grows up, he's never got a financial problem. All the late nights and cold sweats you've had and the thugging that his friends are doing in the street so they can get a couple of dollars, and or hoeing girls have to do in order to pay the bills, all that's gone. Your daughter doesn't have to do that now because daddy had a plan, mama had a plan. That's it. Because they had somebody in their life who cared about them more than they cared about themselves. They thought about the future as much as they thought about the present. That's it. It's a solution. People don't like solutions. There are people, I'm convinced there are people who would rather sit and complain, and the solution will be right in front of them. They're the kind of people who will starve to death standing right in front of the refrigerator. And you will say, just open the refrigerator. There's food in the refrigerator. They enjoy the trauma Olympics of sitting there complaining about how hungry they are. If you convince them to actually open the fridge and cook themselves something to eat, then they've lost their sense of purpose. They have nothing to complain about anymore. So I've lost my advantage. I don't have the moral high ground of being this poor, pathetic Black person because I found a way to solve my problems, and now I can't complain about other people anymore. I actually have to hold myself accountable at that point. People don't like accountability. Let's keep going. After 20 years, you've done $5 a day invested in the S&P 500. After 10 years, your child has $29,000. After 20 years, they have $102,000. So 20 years, age 20, and you don't tell them about it. Don't tell them. Don't give them the money. Don't tell them. None of that. Just do it. Just do it. Just all you got to do, set it to buy every week. Do not sell. Do not sell. Do not sell. That's it. Do not sell. Okay. Hold the line. Right. So after 20 years, they got over $100,000. Really, at that point, you freed them from the corporate plantation. They never have to work for anybody ever. Anybody who has 100 grand in the bank that manages their money can live off of things like in the Prime program, we sell stock options every week. You can literally make more money selling stock options with $100,000 in your account than you could by working most jobs out here anyway. Right. So by age 20, they're pretty much free. Now, imagine if you've been doing the $20 approach that we talked about, like you were really going hard. Again, let's say you spent as much money on your child's future as you put into a car note. Well, if you do the $20 approach, you're not talking about $102,000. You're talking about $400,000. $400,000, that's a hell of a lot of money. Right there, they're not just ahead of almost all Black people. They're ahead of 95, 98% of all white people at that point. Let's go to age 30. Let's say you hang on to the age of 30. Well, if you do $5 a day at the age of 30, it hits about $245,000. Again, this literally requires no investing knowledge. All it requires is that you automatically set auto deposit on your account to consistently buy into some sort of S&P 500 mutual fund, or if you just want to randomly pick S&P 500 stocks, that's fine too, whatever you want to do. And your child at the age of 30 has damn near $250,000. They're free from the corporate plantation. Any poor family can do this because $5 is not enough to buy a Popeye's chicken value meal. And we know that Black people can afford chicken. Lord knows we can afford chicken. If Black people stopped buying Popeye's chicken, they would probably go bankrupt tomorrow. So we know that we can afford this. That debate was killed. When I introduced the $5 a day investing plan, I stopped hearing from the Negro naysayers or the little niglet-minded people. And I hate saying it like that. It sounds mean, but I'm sorry. It drove me crazy. They all shut up. They didn't say anything anymore. When they never came to me anymore with, well, Black people can't afford to invest. All that was muted because I said, well, Black people can't afford to invest. You're saying they can't afford chicken. And we know that they can afford chicken. We know they can afford McDonald's. So you can't tell me they can't afford to do this. So after 30 years, it's nearly $250,000. But if you've done $20 a day, invested in your child the same way you invest in a car note, well, now you're talking about $1 million, damn near $1 million. Your child, literally, you made your child almost not just a millionaire, but you made them a liquid millionaire. Those are two different types of millionaires. There are people who have a net worth of $1 million, and that's nice. That's good. But that's very different from someone who says, oh, I got $1 million in the bank in my portfolio right now. So that's the blessing you've given to that child, and they're going to honor you forever. They're literally going to talk about. All my grandmother did was introduce me to compound interest by buying me savings bonds when I was 5 years old. I made her the mascot on the Black Business School. When you see that panther's name is Felicia, and that's my grandmother. That's how I keep my grandmother alive, and I honor her immensely just for doing that. Imagine if my grandma had left me $1 million, had known to do something like this, and I had $1 million on my 30th birthday. Oh my God. I mean that so this is where you'll be. This is where you'll be in the minds of your kids, your grandkids. If you're older and you're 60, 70 years old and yeah, okay, maybe, we have to admit like some of your best years might be behind you, but I would disagree with that to a point and say really your best years are in front of you if you learn how to think beyond yourself, if you understand that you have these individuals that are an extension of you that are going to be around long after you're here. I'm not going to live, past a certain amount of time. I won't be here in the year 2100, but I have descendants that will be, right? So I'm going to live forever by doing this, right? And they're going to honor me for that. So let's keep going. So after 40 years, here's age 40, $5 a day, 40 years, $750,000. So you've gone in one generation. This is how a family goes in one generation from poor to rich. Very easy to do. I call it the $1 million Happy Meal because literally you can't even buy a Happy Meal $5 a day. But again, let's just be creative. Let's have some fun here. Imagine if you did $20 a day, right? Again, you spent as much on your child as people spend on a car note. Well, that's not $750,000 anymore. That's now three. That's 1.5. Yeah, $3 million. That's $3 million that the child has. So they're deep into millionaire status at that point. Their life is fine. They're not having to get up and go to work with white people who hate them anymore. They're not stressing out and having bad relationships because they don't have enough money. Your daughter can do what she wants. She can live her best life. Your son can really find himself or he can be like me and run his mouth and say whatever he wants and not be scared. I don't say the things that I say what's on my mind, and I say things that are controversial, and people give me credit and like, oh, you're so brave for saying this and saying that. And I say, I'm not really brave. They just can't really touch me like that. They're just not able. They take things from me and I don't care because I understand how to diversify my wealth. So I keep myself economically fortified because I know that the first thing that people do when you are black and you get out of line is they take away your money. They put economic sanctions on you. This is something the United States has done all throughout the world. This is why the BRICS countries are now trying to bond together to get rid of the dollar as the world's reserve currency because they're sick of the United States using their economic power to push sanctions on you, maybe because they don't agree with your gay rights laws or they don't like something about the way you run your country. They understand that the United States is very, very good at various forms of economic dominance and oppression. China is actually pretty good at that too. They just do it in kind of a different way. Okay, so ultimately what I would say to you is that if you really want to fight systematic racism, you have to address economic racism. If we don't address economic racism, then racism will never go away. And you saw that today when you saw the affirmative action laws being rolled back by the Supreme Court. The affirmative action laws were beneficial in the sense that I got opportunities because of affirmative action. So I'm very much in favor of it in terms of I think that qualified Black people who apply for jobs should get those opportunities. So I am a fan of affirmative action. The downside of affirmative action, however, is that it was a little bit of a distraction and a little bit of a crutch. And the reason it was a crutch is because you have to ask yourselves, why is it that Black people had a lot more land, had 10 times more land 100 years ago, 15 times more land 100 years ago than we do right now? Why is it that Black people have more businesses 100 years ago than we do right now? Well, it's because we traded in land and businesses for student loans and corporate jobs. We wanted to, so affirmative action, while it was certainly was a noble gesture in terms of inviting us into a system that we've been systematically sort of excluded from, it was a little bit of a poison bait because it's like being invited to marry somebody who is ultimately going to abuse you. So you move in with them and you end up depending on that person. And then when they start mistreating you, you have nowhere to go. And that's the playbook of any abuser, any abusive marriage. If you look it up, one of the things that abusers do is they isolate you from your source of support and your source of strength. So we were kind of isolated from each other. We were isolated from our economic independence because we were told, like, hey, don't worry about starting a business. We got you. Come work for us. Don't worry about, buying property and all this other stuff. Just come and, we'll let you live in our neighborhoods and we'll let you be around us and all that. So leave your own community behind, leave your own businesses behind, leave your own institutions behind, come be a part of the institutions we have, because we believe in this big melting pot idea, which unfortunately does not work because it comes with an inherent hierarchy that says, we're glad you're here because we need the help, but we really don't want you to tell us how to run these institutions. When I was at Syracuse University, I remember noticing that there was almost what I called an academic ghetto, where they would have all the Black professors in the same department. They would all be in like African American studies or something. And when it came to like the central campus, the people that determined what the institution was going to do next, there were usually no Black people in the room. It was mostly white people sort of in that room. And that led me to think about institutional infrastructure and understanding that there's no way to get around the fundamental truth that if you want to shape an institution, you have to be one of the founding fathers or founding mothers of that institution. Your culture has to be embedded in the underlying deep-seated infrastructure of the creation of that institution. It's like if I'm a nanny or a babysitter or a teacher, I can love a child, I can spend time with the child, I can do everything for that child, but I will never be that child's mother. I will never be that child's father. Ever. I can't. I can try, but I'm not. I'm just not. I'm important, but I'm not. I'll never be that child's parent. So with these institutions, these are not your institutions. You're not the parent of these institutions. You did not give birth to this. So I know it seems like a good shortcut. Really, I get it. Like there's some people who say, yeah, I really don't want to raise a kid from a newborn baby. I don't want to change diapers and do all that stuff. So I'll just go meet a 10-year-old and hang out with the 10-year-old and kind of, be a mentor to the 10-year-old. Well, that's fine, but you'll never be their parent, right? Because to be the parent, you got to do the hard work. You have to go and change the diapers when nobody wants that baby. They have to bond with you in a certain way. So really, what I'm saying is that as Black people, we have to get away from the false belief that we don't have an express obligation to build institutions that are going to serve our people. We do not have enough builders. That is what we need in the next generation if we're going to succeed. We have to literally mass produce millions of Black children that are gonna be builders for the Black community. They have to come in with the skill sets that required to delegate, raise capital, start businesses, create institutions, all these other things. This requires a higher level of thinking. The acronym we use in the Black Business School, what was it? We call it Building Sturdy Children. Sturdy is STERDY, STERDY. And sturdy stands for systems, technology, entrepreneurship, relationships, and delegation for youth. Y is for the youth. So systems means that a system will always make more money than labor. A job is like you work and you get tired and you work as hard as you can, then they pay you per hour. And so you end up with what I call working man's math. Working man's math is like, if I work 40 hours a week and I make $40 an hour, I'm gonna make $1,600. That's not entrepreneur math. Systematic entrepreneur math doesn't say 40 hours a week, $40 an hour is gonna make me $1,600. Entrepreneur math is, if I have 40 units, if I sell 40 units and they're $40 a piece, I'll make $1,600, right? And what happens is that equation is a little bit more convenient and more effective because it scales much more easily. Because in the first example, working man's math, where you're selling time for money, what you're doing is you're selling something that has a tremendous amount of value for something that has a very small amount of value. You're selling hours of your life for 20, 30, 50, maybe $100 if you're lucky, right? But the thing is that's a finite resource. You only have so much time before you are physically tired, physically drained. You can't work anymore. You work until you die at your desk, whatever, right? And then they just replace you with somebody the following week, right? Whereas in the second example, that equation takes time out of the picture entirely. You're literally operating on a whole different level. Metaphysically, you're literally operating in another dimension. You're operating in a dimension where time does not exist. What do I mean by that? Well, if I'm doing entrepreneur math where I have to sell 40 units at $40 a pop to make $1,600, I could do that in 2 seconds. I could open up my website, and if I have enough of a customer base and I understand how to develop the right system, I can make that $1,600 in 10 minutes, right? Or it could take 10 days. Time is not relevant in that particular kind of math. Okay. So systems means that our children should be trained on systems and not just chasing jobs. Systematic thinking is a different kind of thinking. As opposed to just filling out job applications. So technology means technology is going to change everything. AI is big. AI is not going to go away. AI is going to replace a lot of jobs. I think our kids should be on the cutting edge of everything related to artificial intelligence, everything related to technology, because technology scales everything. That's why all the nerdy billionaires are in Silicon Valley. These were the dorky guys that couldn't get a date in high school. Well, now they're worth $80 billion, so they're going to get all the dates that they want. Entrepreneurship means every Black child in our community should know how to be an entrepreneur. I mentioned that earlier. Relationships means that your ability to develop systems and then eventually do the D. The D is delegation. Your ability to delegate within a system requires you to also know how to maintain healthy relationships. So you can't listen to rappers who teach you how to basically be an arrogant prick, where you're disrespecting other people, you're constantly seeking conflict, you're easily triggered, which destroys relationships, which breaks down teams and systems. You have to learn how to be diplomatic. You have to learn how to put your ego to the side. You have to learn how to repair relationships. All these things you have to know how to do what New Edition obviously had to do in order for them to get Bobby Brown and Ralph Transvant and Johnny Gill and everybody on the same page so they could go get that money that they're making going on tour every single year, right? So relationship management isn't just something that you just do with your instincts. It is an acquired skill. It should be a class. It literally should be like you should approach it like you can take a class or if you have a therapist, your therapist can help you with that. Therapists are the best. I love Black therapists. I love my therapist. I talked to my therapist today. My wife is a therapist. I married one. I'm around therapists all the time. They have so many great tools that most of us don't know about that show you just how to repair your relationships. How do I figure out how to get along with my wife so that we don't lose everything because we're fighting each other? Well, therapists will probably have some solutions for you. If you can put your ego down to the side for a little bit and stop thinking that relationships are about power and domination, like you got to control your husband or you got to make your wife submit because I'm a man, I got to make her submit. Well, you're not, people that think like that are into like dominating other people don't do well in relationships. They don't become great leaders. They become bosses, and bosses are not good leaders. Like if you're kind of a bad boss and you're just oppressing people in order to get what you want, you don't maintain power very long. Like one example of a boss, of a mob boss type person is Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin runs Russia with an iron fist. Like he's the boss of Russia because Russia is a country that's built off this almost like criminal infrastructure. There's all these mob bosses. So a lot of his support isn't it isn't organic. It isn't true loyalty. They're not really loyal to him. They're just waiting for him to get caught slipping so they can take him out, right? And you just saw where the Wagner group came down and they were going to do a coup in Russia because he operates in a certain kind of way, right? So basically what I would say is that understanding how to manage relationships, how to create the right ones, avoid the wrong ones, how to build on that, how to repair. I think that should literally be like a class kids take. And think about this, because part of relationships is also just conflict resolution. So imagine if you go back to that crazy example in Chicago of the guy punching that lady in the head. What if everybody in that room was skilled on some level at conflict resolution? What if they had been trained on like how to de-escalate a situation as opposed to making it worse? Because remember, think about this. This was an escalation. Yelling turned into punching. Punching turned into shooting, right? And then that turns into death and prison and all these other terrible things, right? So that's escalation. Did you know, check this out. This is crazy. They did a study where they found that they could predict with 90-something% accuracy which couples would stay married and which ones would get divorced by listening to them argue for 5 minutes. Did you know that? They can literally listen to you argue for 5 minutes and say, oh, they're not going to make it. Or, oh, they're going to be fine. And you know what they looked at? They looked at whether or not you escalate your conflicts or if you de-escalate. If you're seeking to rebuild the bridge or seeking to burn it all up. And this is where I warn you about the culture. I hate certain parts of our culture. I just hate it. Some parts of our culture that were given to us are just terrible because I see so many people that love to brag about all the people they'll cut off in a minute. They love to they love to sort of bring this ego into everything. And I'm just telling you, if you want to be successful at anything, especially anything involving people, you got to learn how to not be an asshole and actually care about other human beings. Like it might be as basic as taking the time to make sure people feel seen and respected. And even drug dealers understand this kind of thing. If you watch that movie, my friend Damon Dash did this movie a long time ago. I forgot what it was called. It wasn't Juice, but it was kind of Paid in Full. I think that's what it was called. And I think there was a scene in Paid in Full where one of the rappers, or one of the, not rappers, one of the drug dealers had a lot of money, and he was really worried when he got a lot of money because he knew that if the other guys did not feel respected, or if he didn't cut them off like a piece of the money and make sure everybody was taken care of, he knew they would probably come and try to kill him. And I saw that as like a type of relationship management that says that if I put my needs ahead of the group on a regular basis, then the group is not going to be loyal to me. Why should they be? I have to give them an incentive to be loyal to me. And you do that by being knowing how to be diplomatic and generous in certain ways. So that's why a lot of the men who believe that they should run their family with an iron fist and demand that everybody submit to their will, what happens is the whole family ends up hating them. And then these men become even more bitter because then next thing you know, the wife is gone, the children don't talk to you anymore. Nobody, no one can stand you, right? And then you're out here in an island by yourself. You have a stroke or something. Nobody's there to take care of you. I knew a guy like that I couldn't understand it. He was 94 years old and he lived by himself, and he had a little bit of Social Security money, and his all of his family members lived in other cities. And he had a 29-year-old girlfriend who was like a prostitute who would come by and smoke crack with him. He was 94 years old, so I guess if you're 94, smoking crack ain't no big deal. This is a real life story. I there's lessons everywhere, economic lessons everywhere. So let me tell you what. So I couldn't understand. I was like, why is his family just letting this man, just sort of live this life by himself, and nobody would come by to help him. Nobody dealt with him or whatever. Well, what happened was one of the relatives told me about what this old man was like when he was a young man. And basically, when he was young, he terrorized everybody in the family. He tried to hit his wife in the head with a hammer. He beat all the kids. He was just a terrible person, and maybe he had his own trauma, because I think he actually was a hitman or something. He would kill people for a living. So, he's kind of in that life. But it really showed me, it made me think as a young man, okay, I don't want to treat people badly, because when I get older, I'm going to need those people to show up for me. Right. So really I would consider these things in terms of preparing kids to lead. Being a decent human being goes a long way. The last part of the STURDY model, STERDY, stands for delegation. A person who understands how to delegate is going to be more successful than a person who doesn't. Even when I run my team, I don't do everything. Everything I do, I can't do all this by myself. I can't do this whole operation by myself. I have a team that I delegate to. And what delegation requires is not just relationship management and people skills. It requires something that a lot of us don't have when we're traumatized, which is trust. So in order for me to let somebody else handle it, I can't have a mindset that says I need to do it myself because I can't trust anybody. And that trust comes from the trauma, which can be dealt with through healing. So all these things, all these seemingly touchy-feely topics that I bring up, they're really important for those of you that really want to grow and want to be successful. People that tend to do really well, like those people that make $100,000 a day and all this other crazy stuff, they tend to just be better at all, really good at all those skills. So I would encourage you to invest in all that. And then if you're raising kids or grandkids, get them in spaces where they're going to learn these things, because that's going to put them just light years ahead of everybody else. You just got, if you want to operate on a higher level, you got to learn to think on a higher level. And unfortunately, there's some places I just go where I'm just thinking, Lord Jesus, there's not gonna be any success anywhere in this space, because everybody's operating on this really low vibrational frequency. So get into spaces of people that are going to be on the same level so you can be successful. All right. So I hope that this was helpful today. I'm going to stop talking. I could talk about this all day. I know. And I hope that I didn't drag the points on for too long, but I really wanted to drill that in so you would understand things. I'm going to reach back out to you guys. We'll do another session on the 10th commandment. The 10th commandment, actually, I can't even tell you what it is. Let me see. What was the 10th? I'm trying. Oh, that's right. Ownership is the key to power. And so even if we can't do that last session, I'll just tell you that right now. So number 9 was always leave a worthy inheritance. Number 10 is ownership is the key to power. And so in that 10th chapter, we talk extensively about ownership and why ownership should be the measure of economic success. In fact, if you're evaluating whether or not someone's successful, like ladies, if you're looking at a man and he's trying to convince you that he's doing well financially, figure out what he owns, which is different from what the bank owns, right? I might have a nice house, but if the bank owns my house, that's different from me owning my house. Or I might have a lot of money and, take you out to fancy restaurants or whatever. That looks good, but that sends a lot of signals about not just how much money I may or may not have. It sends signals that you should consider, like, where's this money coming from? Is this, first of all, is it clean money or dirty money? Is he using debt to do this, right? Is he going into debt? Also, if he has bad spending habits and he's leaking, he's got these big financial leaks, that sets a higher threshold such that even if he can afford to spend the way he's spending, what does it take to maintain that? Like, I'll give you a good example. Nick Cannon, he sort of secretly revealed that he makes close to $100 million a year. He claimed, at least that's what I think he was insinuating when he did an LA Times article trying to justify, having all these kids with all these women, which that's his business. That's what he's choosing to do. I met Nick's father. He called me one time to talk about something, and he was a smart man. And I judged the apple by what tree it came from. And Nick's father is a smart guy. He's very pro-Black. So it helped me understand Nick a little bit better, but I've never met Nick. And I feel like Nick is in this awkward position where I think he's trying to regain the respect that I think he lost when he kind of got spanked publicly for disobeying Jewish people. But anyway, with Nick, he mentioned that he makes, 80, $90 million a year or something, and that allows him to take care of all these women and all these kids. And so there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. That's his choice, right? That's his decision. We can have opinions about that. But here's what's interesting about that is the thing that I thought about was I said, so you set a really high benchmark for yourself, right? So basically you've got, all these women you've had kids with, and to some extent, I'm not going to say they're like employees, but they kind of are a little bit, right? They're expecting money. Like he's probably been very generous, I imagine, with them and said, hey, I'll send you $100,000 a month or whatever, and make sure you can live a good lifestyle. So what the challenge with that becomes is that when you're spending at that level, you have to maintain that, right? He's going to have to be able to make income at an extremely high level for the rest of his life, or he's going to have problems if his income ever drops, right? And I hope that never happens. And I'm not going to assume that his situation isn't well thought out. Maybe that's exactly how he wants to live his life. I'm not here to judge that. I think that there are obviously emotional consequences to having a father that doesn't have time, to spend with every child. But again, we can debate that later. But my point is to say that if you're evaluating someone's financial security, a person that spends a lot of money, they may be spending a lot of money because they just have a lot of money and it's nothing but a thing for them to spend it. I've seen that too. But sometimes them spending a lot of money tells you about how fast the outflow is of their money and how much income and wealth will be required to maintain that lifestyle to which they become accustomed. So there's a lot of measures to financial security. I think ownership is something that we should really think about. As a community, that needs to be more important than just income. Income doesn't mean a whole lot if you don't do anything with it. If all you're gonna do is make money so you can go pay the landlord and then go spend it at the store and whatever, then it's like eating food and it just goes out in one side and out the other. It's almost like it never happened. You don't want your wealth to do that. You want wealth to have some accumulation process where you're taking in this income, like water coming out of a faucet. That's why they call money liquidity. I visualize it like water coming out of a faucet. So you have to have a bucket that is collecting this water so that you get to the point where even if they shut the faucet off, you're still going to have plenty of water. And then one example that I want you to pay attention to is I want you to see how many people go into a straight panic whenever there's a government shutdown. Whenever the Democrats and Republicans start debating and over the debt ceiling and the government shuts down, a lot of Black people get economically destroyed, including some wealthy Black people in places like Prince George's County and stuff like that, because they haven't put anything into their economic bucket. So when they cut the faucet off, they're pretty much done. So you got to get in the, so this can be fixed by basic habits like living below your means, which again is a psychological process that goes far beyond just simply knowing what to do. It's also a matter of having the emotional disposition and the discipline when you're living in a society where no one lives above their means, everybody lives above everyone lives above their means. No one lives below their means, right? Living below your means is seen as kind of lame and overly conservative, and you're not being flashy, so you don't fit in as well. So you have to be comfortable doing that. Your kids have to be comfortable doing that. So one thing that my mom did when I was a kid, I don't know if she did this on purpose, but it really worked, was my mother, when I would go to my mother and talk about my friends that had my cousins and stuff that had name brand shoes, name brand jeans, name brand clothes. Remember back in the day, people have a little polo shirt, or they'd have the jeans with the little name on the back, or the Nike sneakers. Like I wanted all that. I wanted name brand stuff, and my mother never bought that for me. And her excuse, I thought she was just being cheap, to be honest with you. I feel like she still might have been, but her argument was, I don't want you to define your worth based on a label, and it worked. Now I don't I bet you I bought this shirt at Walmart. I literally bet you I bought this shirt. And some of y'all might be looking at me saying, yeah, it looks like you bought that shirt at Walmart, but it's okay. I still know I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, even if I'm wearing a Walmart shirt. And that's okay, because I don't measure my worth. I could be wearing $1,000 shirt and I wouldn't feel like I was suddenly $1,000 more worthy than I was when I walked in this room. My worth is being measured by things like, am I a good person or a bad person? Am I there for my wife and my kids? Am I talking to you guys about something that's going to improve your life? That's what matters, right? The fact that my shirt costs $1,000 is just secondary, right? I mean, I could wear $1,000 shirt, I guess. I mean, if I want to look nice or something, you might see me out here in a nice suit or two, right? Every now and then I'll do it. I'll play the part, but for the most part, I think there's something to be said about that, because people who think that way, in my view, are people who can live below their means and not feel like they're missing out, or not feel like they're that they're being scrubs, or that they're embarrassing themselves. And then the other thing too is that when you pick who you marry, or whatever, you want someone that has that same mindset, right? So when I was picking my wife, and I was single, and I was ready to settle down and do whatever. And I would meet nice women, and the women I instantly walked away from were the women who were too caught up in my status, who were too caught up in the fact that I know famous people, or that maybe I could get them into the Grammys or the BET Awards or whatever. And that wasn't of interest to me, because I knew that I would disappoint them, because I don't care about things like that. I'm not going to change what I say or what I do because I'm trying to fit in with celebrities, because I don't have a lot of respect for a lot of celebrities. I mean, I think that they're fine, but I'm not impressed with that, because white people gave you money and put you on TV. That almost is a liability. So those are not women I was interested in. My wife was awesome, because my wife is simple-minded, like I am, in terms of or she has simple taste too. Like we have nice stuff if we like it. Like if we like nice stuff, like she did buy me some luggage, the Toomey bags or something, that are like awesome. They could survive like a nuclear blast damn near, and they have a lifetime warranty, and they're real expensive. So every now and then she'll buy me something real nice. Like we'll go on a trip, and it'll be a real nice trip or whatever. But for the most part, it's like the things that don't matter, it's not like we're going to overspend to impress anybody. There's literally nobody where we're thinking, oh yeah, we got to impress these people, or we have to look a certain way in order for us to fit into society. And so one of our daughter's friends, she liked this little boy, and his parents came by, and they were super nice people. And the wife, actually, I guess she's B1. She's like part of the culture or whatever. So they came by, and they saw me. They're like, wait, you're that guy, right? And I was sitting on the porch with the father, and we're talking, and he says to the other guy that was on the porch with us, he says, yeah, he said, I figured that Boyce Watkins lived somewhere. Like, I thought he lived in a castle on a hill or in some mansion somewhere. I didn't think he lived like in my neighborhood in like a regular house. And so really what I would say to you is, I think it helps when you take the pressure off yourself. That's the point. B1 means black first, in case you knew. B1 means black first. But meaning you put yourself at your community at the top of the priority list. So I saw someone ask, what's B1? That's what B1 is. But what I would say to you is that the lower your economic expectation is in terms of trying to impress other people, the less economic pressure you put on yourself, which reduces your financial anxiety. Financial anxiety is a very big issue that a lot of people face. And your anxiety tends to be heightened when you carry a heavier load, Like if you think that because you're the only one in the family who went to Harvard, and which means you always have to pay for the food, and you've always got to drive a certain kind of car, you've always got to wear certain kind of clothes, you've always got to live in a certain kind of neighborhood, that becomes exhausting. That becomes exhausting because then when it gets to the point where you're like ready to let it all go, maybe for some philosophical reason or whatever, you can't. You're trapped. Your life can trap you. So there are lots of rich people who are in various traps. There is such a thing as financial addiction, and I could go into that. I can, there's more to talk about, but I'm not going to drag this on. We've been here for quite a while. I think we've talked about 3 hours tonight, and I hope that this training was helpful to you. I really enjoyed talking through these ideas with you, and I really hope that you apply even a fraction of this with your family, because I'm really telling you, I think you have a great opportunity to do something amazing. And this is our chance. 2023 will never come again, no matter how long we wait. This is our year, our chance. We're on top. We are, this is our world right now. Let's go nail it. Let's go do it. Let's go get it done right now. Okay. All right. So anyway, if you want to get a copy of the book, you can go to boycewatkins.com. If you still haven't gotten a copy of my book, it's the 10 Commandments of Black Economic Power. But also on Amazon, there's some other series if you're interested. Black American Money. That's a series I did years ago. There's 3 parts to it. Financial Lovemaking. I did that book about money and relationships. Also, if you want to get access to the study guide, I'll put the link in here. And don't forget, when you go to the store, if you use the code word book club, all one word, you can get an automatic 30% off. And that's the link if you want to get a hard copy of the study guide. So if you go there, and that's 30% in addition to any other discounts that are already there. So if something's already discounted by 20%, then that code book club, all one word, will give you a discount like on another 30% on top of the 20% or whatever. Okay, so feel free to take a look at that. Last but not least, the recording, those of you that are on the list that came into the Zoom, I'll send you a link, and I'll send out the recording so you can watch it again if you'd like. And also, the All Black National Convention. So if you want to come to the convention, or if you want to be a vendor and make some money there, or be a sponsor, you have a Black owned business and you want us to promote you, we have a great big audience, and we can help put money in your pocket. So we'd love to partner with you. So just go to allblacknationalconvention.com. There's ways to sponsor, like the Wi-Fi. You can sponsor the Wi-Fi where people will see your brand every time they get on the Wi-Fi, or you can sponsor things where we can put things on the hotel doors or whatever it is, or stuff that's in the goodie bag. So feel free to go to allblacknationalconvention.com. It's going to be October 20th through the 22nd in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Marriott Marquis Hotel. We basically gathered most of our speakers. We have about 45 speakers from areas related to health and medicine, to estate planning, to crypto, to artificial intelligence, to real estate investing. I mean, the list is pretty exhaustive of all the people that we have there. So you're really going to enjoy it. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to have a lot of fun, just like we do every year. So go to allblacknationalconvention.com if you want to still get the early bird ticket. All right, guys.